Welcome back to Hot Takes Global TV. Today, we're diving deep into one of the biggest power and economic stories of 2025. It's the unexpected decision by President Donald Trump to publicly announce he is ruling out Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as a candidate for the Federal Reserve Chair. This news not only sent shockwaves through Wall Street, but also reignited profound questions about the future of U.S. monetary policy, especially against the backdrop of simmering tensions between the White House and the Fed since the early days of his administration. This article won't just be a news report. We will collectively analyze the context and details of Trump's surprising announcement, who Scott Bessent is and why his withdrawal is so significant, the public and private confrontations between the Trump administration and the Fed since the beginning of 2025, the other potential candidates for the most powerful position in the American economy, and finally, the deeper meaning of this power struggle for both the U.S. and the global economy. 1. The shock announcement. Bessent will not be Fed chair. On July 7, 2025, during a live interview on CNBC's Squawk Box, President Donald Trump made an announcement that took investors and political analysts by surprise. When asked about the possibility of appointing Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as Fed chair, Trump was unequivocal. Scott will not be the Fed chair. He told me he wants to stay at the Treasury. This news immediately created a stir. For months, Scott Bessent's name had been at the top of the list of potential candidates. With his impressive Wall Street backgrounds and close relationship with Trump, Bessent was seen as the perfect choice to replace current chair Jerome Powell. Observers believed that Bessent could be the person to reconcile the president's desire for a looser monetary policy while maintaining market stability and confidence. However, Trump's statement changed everything. Although he continued to praise Bessent, calling him excellent and doing a great job, the removal of a leading contender opened a new, uncertain chapter in the search for the head of the Fed. This shows that Trump, despite his trust in Bessent, seems to want a candidate with a different perspective and vision for the role. 2. Scott Bessent, the Wall Street legend and trusted ally. So who is Scott Bessent, and why is his withdrawal met with such a sense of significance? He's not just a politician or a traditional economist, he's a legend in the investment world. Born in 1962, Scott Bessent began his career in international financial markets in the 1980s. He's most famous for his role as a partner at the Soros Fund Management, SFM, founded by billionaire George Soros. During his 20 years there, Bessent made bold investment decisions that generated immense profits. One of his most notable successes was betting on the depreciation of the Japanese yen in the 1990s, earning nearly $1 billion in just a few months. His extensive experience was not limited to currency trading, but also included fixed income and global markets. In 2005, he founded his own firm, Key Square Capital Management, and continued to achieve success. With 40 years of experience in global investment management, Bessent possesses a deep understanding of how financial markets and macroeconomic policies work. Interestingly, Bessent was once a supporter of the Democratic Party, even hosting fundraisers for politicians like Al Gore and Barack Obama. However, since the 2016 election, he has become a fervent supporter of Trump and one of his closest economic advisors. This political shift, combined with his exceptional financial background, made him a key figure in the Trump administration. When Trump took office in January 2025, Bessent's appointment as Treasury Secretary was seen as a strategic move, placing a Wall Street expert in the highest position in the Treasury Department. 3. The underlying conflict: Bessent's views versus Trump's demands. Why would a seemingly perfect candidate like Bessent not want to be the Fed chair? The answer lies in a fundamental conflict over monetary policy philosophy between him and President Trump, particularly regarding the independence of the Fed. President Trump has long been an outspoken critic of the Fed, especially under Chair Jerome Powell. He has argued that the Fed has been too cautious in cutting interest rates and has hindered the economic growth his administration is striving to promote. He believes the Fed should serve the economic goals of the government, a view that goes against the fundamental principle of central bank independence. Scott Bessent, with his deep experience in financial markets, is a strong advocate for Fed independence. A report from the Wall Street Journal revealed that Bessent had advised Trump to keep Jerome Powell. He warned that firing the Fed chair for policy disagreements could trigger a legal and political nightmare. He understands that the Fed's independence is vital for maintaining market confidence, and undermining it could cause serious instability in the economy. Besant's decision to decline the position could be seen as a strategic move. By staying at the Treasury, he can focus on implementing the administration's fiscal policies, such as tax cuts and spending measures, without facing the intense political pressures of running the Fed. This allows him to remain a close advisor to the president while avoiding potential conflicts over monetary policy. 4. The confrontations with the Fed since early 2025. Since taking office in January 2025, President Donald Trump has consistently ramped up pressure on the Fed, creating a series of public and private confrontations. January 2025, post-inauguration criticism. Within the first few weeks of his return to the White House, Trump began his campaign of criticizing the Fed on his social media platform, Truth Social. He repeatedly posted messages demanding that the Fed cut interest rates to support the economy. He argued that inflation was under control and the Fed was stifling growth. March 2025, desperate calls for rate cuts. Before the FOMC meeting in March, President Trump gave a public speech emphasizing that the economy needed a stimulus from the Fed. He likened the current monetary policy to a stuck brake and called on the Fed to act immediately to avert a recession. May 2025, discussions about replacing Powell. The confrontation reached a peak in May when several media outlets reported that Trump had discussed the possibility of replacing Powell with his advisors. Although Powell's term was not yet over, the president's public discussion of his replacement sent a strong signal to the market and Fed members. This was also when names like Scott Bessent and Kevin Warsh began to be mentioned more frequently. June 2025, pressure mounts as the Fed holds rates. At its June meeting, the Fed decided to keep interest rates unchanged, a move Trump called disappointing and a mistake. He directly criticized Chair Powell, arguing that the Fed was harming American families and small businesses. However, other Fed members like Governor Christopher Waller and Michelle Baumann surprisingly voted for a rate cut, a sign that he may be someone who is willing to listen to and act on signals from the market and the administration. These confrontations show a significant shift in the relationship between the White House and the Fed. While the Fed consistently asserts its independence, the pressure from President Trump is a factor that cannot be ignored and could influence future policy decisions. 5. Other candidates and the future of the Fed. Bessent's withdrawal doesn't mean Trump is short of options. The race for the Fed chair now revolves around several other potential candidates. Kevin Warsh, a former member of the Fed Board of Governors. Warsh is a respected candidate on Wall Street. He has direct experience working at the Fed and is known for his hawkish stance, favoring tighter policy to combat inflation. Appointing Warsh would send a signal that the Fed will continue to maintain its independent viewpoint. Kevin Hassett. Currently the director of Trump's National Economic Council, Hassett is a Latagon economist. He's a strong supporter of tax cuts and growth-oriented policies. Hassett is seen as a more friendly choice for the administration, but lacks direct experience in monetary policy at the Fed. Christopher Waller, a current Fed governor. Waller is a surprising internal option. He recently joined Governor Michelle Baumann in voting for a rate cut, a sign that he may be someone who is willing to listen to and act on signals from the market and the administration. Appointing Waller would send a message that Trump may have found someone with a similar perspective from within the Board of Governors itself. David Malpass, the former president of the World Bank. Malpass is an influential figure in international finance. He's a former deputy Treasury Secretary and a strong supporter of Trump's policies. 6. The deeper meaning, Fed independence and the global economy. Trump's decision about Bessent and the race for the Fed chair is not just a domestic issue. It has profound implications for the global economy. The independence of the Fed is one of the most important pillars of the world financial system. When its central bank can make decisions based on economic data and long-term goals, such as price stability and maximum employment, rather than short-term political pressure, it creates confidence for investors. If Trump appoints a Fed chair who is too friendly to the administration, it could lead to an overly loose monetary policy, risking a rise in inflation in the future. This could weaken the value of the US dollar, reduce confidence in the US economy, and create instability in global financial markets. Conversely, if he chooses someone with experience and credibility, like Kevin Warsh, it could soothe markets and send a signal that he still respects the Fed's independence to some degree. However, given his history, the confrontation between the White House and the central bank will likely not end anytime soon. 7. Conclusion. President Donald Trump's decision to rule out Scott Bessent from the Fed chair race is a crucial turning point. It has exposed the underlying tensions that exist between the administration and the central bank. While Bessent was a potential candidate, his withdrawal has revealed a fundamental difference in philosophy. The current search for the head of the Fed is not just a battle of personalities, but a struggle for power and economic philosophy. The person chosen will face a dual challenge: upholding the Fed's independence while navigating constant political pressure from the White House. Regardless of who is chosen, this decision will shape U.S. monetary policy for years to come and have far-reaching effects on the entire global economy. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis insightful, please give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to Hot Takes Global TV for more hot takes on the most important global news.